I say quite frankly that I find this a melancholy occasion. Like my right honourable friend, the member for Sparkbrook, I feel bound to vote against the proposals of His Majesty's government, one intimately and responsibly concerned in the earlier stages of our Palestine policy. I could not stand by and see solemn engagements into which Britain has entered before the world set aside for reasons of administrative convenience, and it will be a vain hope, for the sake of a quiet life. Like my right honourable friend, I should feel personally embarrassed in the most acute manner if I lent myself, by silence or inaction, to what I must regard as an act of repudiation. I can understand that others take a different view. There are many views which may be taken. Some may consider themselves less involved in the declarations of former governments. Some may feel that the burden of keeping faith weighs upon them rather oppressively. Some may be pro-Arab, and some may be anti-Semite. None of these motives offers me any means of escape, because I was from the beginning a sincere advocate of the Balfour Declaration, and I have made repeated public statements to that effect. It is often supposed that the Balfour Declaration was an ill-conceived, sentimental act, largely concerned with the Right Honourable Member for Carnarvon Boroughs, for which the Conservative Party had no real responsibility. And that, as the Secretary of State said yesterday, was a thing done in the tumult of the war. But hardly any step was taken with greater deliberation and responsibility. I was glad to hear the account which my right honourable friend, the member for Sparkbrook, gave, derived from the days when he was working in the Secretariat of the War Cabinet, with the care and pains with which the whole field was explored at that time. Not only did the War Cabinet of those days take the decision, but all cabinets of every party after the war, after examining it, in the varying circumstances which have arisen, have endorsed the decision and taken the fullest responsibility for it. It was also endorsed in the most cordial and enthusiastic terms by many of the ablest Conservative private members who came into the House when a great Conservative majority arrived after the general election at the end of 1918. It was endorsed from the very beginning by my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister. Now I come to the gravamen of the case. I regret very much that the pledge of the Balfour Declaration, endorsed as it has been by successive governments, and the conditions under which we obtained the mandate, have both been violated by the government's proposals. There is much in this white paper which is alien to the spirit of the Balfour Declaration, but I will not trouble about that. I select the one point upon which there is plainly a breach and repudiation of the Balfour Declaration: the provision that Jewish immigration can be stopped in 5 years' time by the decision of an Arab majority. That is a plain breach of a solemn obligation. I am astonished that my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, of all others, and at this moment above all others, should have lent himself to this new and sudden default. To whom was the pledge of the Balfour Declaration made? It was not made to the Jews of Palestine. It was not made to those who were actually living in Palestine. It was made to world Jewry, in particular to the Zionist associations. It was in consequence of and on the basis of this pledge that we received important help in the war, and that after the war we received from the Allied and associated powers the mandate for Palestine. This pledge of a home of refuge, of an asylum, was not made to the Jews in Palestine, but to the Jews outside Palestine. That vast, unhappy mass of scattered, persecuted, wandering Jews, whose intense, unchanging, unconquerable desire has been for a national home. To quote the words to which my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, subscribed in the memorial which he and others sent to us: the Jewish people who have, through centuries of dispersion and persecution, patiently awaited the hour of its restoration to its ancestral home. Those are the words. They were the people outside, not the people in. It is not with the Jews in Palestine that we have now, or at any future time, to deal, but with world Jewry, and Jews all over the world. That is the pledge which was given, and that is the pledge which we are now asked to break. For how can this pledge be kept I want to know if in 5 years' time the national home is to be barred and no more Jews are to be allowed in without the permission of the Arabs. I cannot understand what are the credentials of the government in this matter of Palestine. It is less than 2 years, about 18 months if I remember right, since they came forward and on their faith and reputation, with all their knowledge and concerted action, urged us to adopt a wholly different solution from that which they now place before us. The House persuaded them not to force us into an incontinent acceptance of their partition plan, and within a few months, though they did not thank us for it, they had themselves abandoned and discarded it, as precipitously as they had adopted it. Why now should they thrust this far more questionable bundle of expedients upon us? Surely it would only be prudent and decent for the government, following the advice given by the Chancellor of the Exchequer when he was a private member in 1930, following the opinion of the jurists of those days, to ascertain the view taken by the Mandates Commission of the League of Nations, before whom these proposals are to go, before claiming a parliamentary decision in their favor. I cannot understand why this course has been taken. I search around for the answer. The first question one would ask oneself is foreshadowed in a reference made in the speech of my honorable friend, and is this: is our condition so parlous and our state so poor that we must, in our weakness, make this sacrifice of our declared purpose? Although I have been very anxious that we should strengthen our armaments and spread our alliances, and so increase the force of our position, I must say that I have not taken such a low view of the strength of the British Empire, or of the very many powerful countries who desire to walk in association with us. But if the government, with their superior knowledge of the deficiencies in our armaments which have arisen during their stewardship, really feel that we are too weak to carry out our obligations, and wish to file a petition in moral and physical bankruptcy, that is an argument which, however ignominious, should certainly weigh with the House in these dangerous times. But is it true? I do not believe it is true. I cannot believe that the task to which we set our hands 20 years ago in Palestine is beyond our strength, or that faithful perseverance will not, in the end, bring that task through to a glorious success. I am sure of this, that to cast the plan aside and show yourselves infirm of will, and unable to pursue a long, clear, and considered purpose, bending and twisting under the crush and pressure of events, I am sure that that is going to do us a most serious and grave injury at a time like this. We must ask ourselves another question, which arises out of this. Can we, and this is the question, strengthen ourselves by this repudiation? Shall we relieve ourselves by this repudiation? I should have thought that the plan put forward by the Colonial Secretary in his white paper, with its arid constitutional ideas and safety catches at every point, and with vagueness overlaying it and through all of it, combines, as far as one can understand it at present, the disadvantages of all courses without the advantages of any. The triumphant Arabs have rejected it. The despairing Jews will resist it. What will the world think about it? What will our friends say? What will be the opinion of the United States of America? Shall we not lose more? This is a question to be considered maturely. In the growing support and sympathy of the United States, and we shall gain in local administrative convenience, if we gain at all, indeed we do. What will our potential enemies think? What will those who have been stirring up these Arab agitators think? Will they not be encouraged by our confession of recoil? Will they not be tempted to say, they're on the run again, this is another Munich, and be the more stimulated in their aggression by these very unpleasant reflections which they may make? After all, we were asked by the Secretary of State to approach this question in a spirit of realism and to face the real facts, and I ask seriously of the government, shall we not undo by this very act of objection some of the good which we have gained by our guarantees to Poland and to Romania, by our admirable Turkish alliance, and by what we hope and expect will be our Russian alliance? We must consider these matters. May not this be a contributory factor? Every factor is a contributory factor now, by which our potential enemies may be emboldened to take some irrevocable action, and then find out, only after it is too late, that it is not this government, with their tired ministers and flagging purpose that they have to face, but the might of Britain and all that Britain means. It is hoped to obtain 5 years of easement in Palestine by this proposal. Surely the consequences will be entirely the opposite. A sense of moral weakness in the mandatory power, as many years of vacillation and uncertainty have, as the right honourable gentleman admitted yesterday, largely provoked the evils from which we suffer, will rouse all the violent elements in Palestine to the utmost degree. In order to avoid the bitter reproach of shutting out refugees during this time of brutal persecution, the quota of immigration may be raised, as we were told by the Secretary of State, may be continued at an even higher level in the next 5 years. Thus, irritation will continue and the incentive to resist will be aggravated. What about these 5 years? Who shall say where we are going to be 5 years from now? Europe is more than 2/3 mobilized tonight. The ruinous race of armaments now carries whole populations into the military machine. That cannot possibly continue for 5 years, nor for 4, nor for 3 years. Maybe that it will not continue beyond the present year. Long before those 5 years are past, either there will be a Britain which knows how to keep its word on the Balfour Declaration and is not afraid to do so, or believe me, we shall find ourselves relieved of many overseas responsibilities other than those comprised within the Palestine Mandate. Some of us hold that our safety at this juncture resides in being bold and strong. We urge that the reputation for fidelity of execution, strict execution, of public contracts is a shield and buckler which the British Empire, however it may arm, cannot dispense with and cannot desire to dispense with. Never was the need for fidelity and firmness more urgent than now. We are not going to found and forge the fabric of a grand alliance to resist aggression, except by showing continued examples of your firmness in carrying out, even under difficulties and in the teeth of difficulties, the obligations into which you have entered. I warned the Conservative Party, and some of my warnings have not, alas, been ill-founded, that by committing themselves to this lamentable act of default, they will cast our country, and all that it stands for, one more step downwards in its fortunes, which step will later on have to be retrieved, as it will be retrieved, by additional hard exertions. That is why I say that upon the large aspect of this matter, the policy which you think is a relief and an easement, you will find afterwards you will have to retrieve in suffering and greater exertions than those which we are making.